All right, this is a video key for version B of the CFA 1.3 through 1.5. All right, so this first problem, we are looking for a midpoint. So I gave you some points here. Looking for midpoint, you have to remember that midpoint means you're finding an average. You're finding the middle. So that's the average between two numbers. So average is adding, distance is difference. So you have to know the difference between that and doing distance formula. So this is finding an average because we're doing the midpoint formula. So here's the formula. You don't always have to write out the formula, but I'm just writing it out here. So remember, you're just adding the x's, dividing by 2. That's how you find the average between two numbers. Adding the y's and dividing by 2. So we're doing u and r. So we got -4 plus 2. And just showing that initial plug-in is what I need for sure. Divide that by 2. And then for the y's, -2 and -3. So -2 plus -3. So I don't want you to write minus. Remember, I told you that because that's when it's going to mess with your brain. And then you're going to accidentally do this as a subtraction problem when it shouldn't be. It's the average. So I always just leave it as adding. Don't change it. Okay, now we're just going to simplify. I like to do more steps, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Oh, and this is point M. So we have -2 over 2. And then -2 plus -3 is -5 over 2. And I'm going to reduce that. First one is -1. And the second one you can leave as -5/2. Or since it's a terminating decimal, we can write it as a decimal as well. Okay, and there's your answer. It's -1, -2.5. And you must have the parentheses. Otherwise, it means something very different. It would mean two values for the same variable, like in a parabola where you have x is equal to 2 and 3 maybe. But with parentheses, it means that this is what x equals. X equals -1 and y equals -2.5. So it's two different variables. So you must have parentheses. All right, for the next one, I'm asking you to find the coordinates of Q if R is the midpoint. Not Q, if R is the midpoint. So this time, we're not doing the same formula just straight up because we don't know both of these numbers. We only know one of the endpoints, S, which was given up here. So I've got this line segment QS, and I'm told what the midpoint is. The midpoint is this R, point R, and I'm trying to find the other midpoint. So I'm just going to use some variables here. I only need to do x and y, not subscripts here, because there's only there's two unknowns, but one x unknown, one y unknown. And then I know that my midpoint R is 2, -3. And then I also know that my other endpoint is S, -1, 5. So if I were to try to find this midpoint R, say I didn't know it, I would take this x and this x, add them together, divide by 2. I'd take this y and this y, add them together, and divide by 2. So I'm just going to write that. I'm going to write that I'm going to do x plus -1, because those are the x values, and we're going to divide that by 2. And then for the next one, we're going to do our y, our y, color coding here, plus our y over here, which is 5. And then we're going to divide that by 2. So that would be our midpoint, R, but I don't know these variables, x and y, so I can't really do anything. But what I do know is what I'm supposed to get. This is supposed to end up equaling 2, and this is supposed to end up equaling -3. So there's an equation for you. I know what it's supposed to equal here and an expression that it also equals. So that's going to help me solve for those unknowns here. So we're just going to write an equation, x plus -1. Oh, let me rewrite that. X plus -1 over 2 has to equal this 2 right here. This has to equal this. And now this has to equal this. So we have y plus 5. Y plus 5 over 2 is equal to -3. Okay? So I rewrote those just in a different color here. Okay, so now we can solve. I'm going to solve them simultaneously. To get rid of that 2 in the denominator, we have to undo it. So we're just going to multiply by 2. We got to do that to both sides. So that gives us x plus -1 equals 4. And then over here, times 2 gives us y plus 5 equal to -6. I'm running out of room, but you're going to add 1 to both sides. So you get x is equal to a +5. You're going to subtract 5 from both sides on this one, and so that gives you y as negative 11. So your point, the coordinates for Q are 5, negative 11. And again, you have to write it as a coordinate point. Then you can also check your answer by making sure that the average of point Q and S really does equal 2 and negative 3. So quickly in our heads, 5 plus negative 1 is 4 divided by 2. Yep, that's 2. Here, negative 11 plus 5 is negative 6 divided by 2. Yep, that's negative 3. So that confirms our answer. And that's it for number 2. One more thing about 2. Yes, you do need to use equations. Okay, we're not guessing and checking or using slope or anything like that. We've had algebra. We know how to do those things. Okay? All right, moving on to number 3. It says, given these 2 points, find LN. Guys, this is just the distance between L and N. It is the length of a segment of the line segment LN. So you're using the distance formula. All right, so I wrote down the distance formula. You need to know that. And now let's go ahead and plug in our numbers here. Again, the order doesn't really matter. Which one you choose is x1, y1, x2, y2 doesn't matter. But when you do the subtraction, you really should start always with the same point. So either start with x2, y2, or the second point, so x2 and y2 first, or make this x1 and y1 first. If you do x2 here but then do y1 here, it's going to cause you issues down the road when you're finding things like slope where order does matter. Here, it's not going to matter because we're just finding the difference and squaring it, so the result will always be positive. All right, so I'm going to do ln is equal to square root of, I'm going to write the square root last. We have to do our x's, so second x is 2. So I'm going to write 2 minus, immediately writing that minus, this negative 5 here. So notice I have 2 negatives in a row. I'm not going to change it yet. I always want you to write minus first. Do not, like, I'll go back and I'll say, oh, you know, that's adding a positive like that. That's fine, but for you to just write 2 plus 5 is going to mess with your brain. It's going to tell you that this formula is adding when it's actually subtracting. So this in here is subtracting because you're finding distance, but then this is adding. Because remember, this came from the distance, or from Pythagorean theorem. You're not allowed to use Pythagorean theorem, but the formula does come from Pythagorean theorem. All right, so then for our y's, we have our y2, which is negative 1. So we're going to write negative 1 minus, and we're going to subtract our y, sorry, that was y2 if I said y1. Go, and then we're going to subtract our y1, which is 5. And then the square root of all of that. Okay, so now the 2 minus negative 5 was 2 plus 5 is 7 squared. I can get away with not using the parentheses because remember 7 squared is the same thing as 7 with parentheses squared. But over here, negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6, and I have to, you absolutely must, keep the parentheses because negative 6 without the parentheses does not equal negative 6 with the parentheses. This is negative 36 while this is positive 36. So the parentheses are supposed to be there. We only drop them because it doesn't, on this one, because it doesn't matter. It's the same thing as if it were with no parentheses. Not the case here. All right, so then when we square 7, we get 49. We square negative 6, we get positive 36. You should always, always, always get positive numbers here with the distance formula. And then adding those together, we get 85. So it's going to be the square root of 85 is our exact answer. So some people were putting like the long decimal that your calculator gives you, but guys, you have to remember that's not exact still. That's your calculator rounding. So you have to put square root of 85. It's an irrational number. This is exact. Whatever your calculator spits out, even if it spits out 10 digits to you, that is estimated. And then I asked you to estimate to the nearest hundredth. It ended up being 9.21, I think 8, something like that. But regardless, since we're rounding to the hundredths place, it should be a 2 there. It did round up the 1 to a 2. So 9.22. Okay, I did misspeak. It was a 9 afterwards, but still it rounds it up. All right, for the measuring of the angles, so I took off points if you were too far off. So if you're way off, I took off a complete point, which I did have some people have some way off answers and I was confused about. But I did try to, like when you extended the side, like for this one, I tried to measure it using yours and to see if it was reasonable what measurement you got. But if you were too far off, I just had to take points off. This one ended up being around 37 degrees or something like that, and this was like around 128 or it was probably like 128, maybe 129. But you did have to extend for sure for this one. And what I had some people do though was they got it wrong. They got like 130. That's too far, or 131 or something like that. That's too far off because what happened was like when you were reading it on your protractor, you had like, so it wasn't right on 130. Maybe 130 was like over here. And then you said that that made it 131, but when actually going in that direction made it smaller. So it was like this, and then you read it in between here, or no, you read it in between. It was actually here. So that would be between 125 and 130, but you said it was between 130 and 135. So you got like 131. So you weren't looking to see, oh, it's a little bit past 130. Oh, no, it's not. It's a little bit before 130 because it gets smaller this way. If you went this way, that's when it'd be a little bigger than 130. So you have to be careful when you're reading these. So just really line it up. Make sure you're putting that dot in the middle and lining up this line, and you have to extend the line if it does not reach. So this one wouldn't have reached, this one did on my protractors I have in class. So be careful when you're measuring angles there. All right, that's it for the first page. Let's go to the second page. All right, so for this page, we either did really well or we missed it completely. So those of you that missed it completely, what you have to realize is you've got to know these relationships. The algebra is not hard, but if you can't even set up the equation because you don't know the relationship, you're going to get tons of points off. So it's not acceptable for you to not know the relationships. So you need to make sure you understand them. So like for this first one, bisects, you should know that. It doesn't mean to just cut something into two pieces. It means to cut it into two equal pieces. Okay, so it's not like you're cutting a piece of cake and you're like, oh, let's split it. And then you give your brother or sister a small piece, take that piece and cut it so one piece is bigger than the other and you take the bigger piece. No, it's exactly in half for bisects. So we're told that BE bisects angle ABE. Okay, so this ray BE is this right here. Bisects angle ABE. So ABD. I'm sorry, I meant ABD. That's the angle measure you're trying to find. But it says ABD. So that's the one I just highlighted. ABD. So it bisects it. So that means that these two are congruent angles. Well, what are those two angles? I told you that ABE is 7x minus 38. So that's the measure of this angle. It's supposed to be an degree sign. And then this angle is 2x plus 47. So since these two angles are congruent, that means that their measures are equal. So I just wrote that out here. Their angles are congruent because we got the bisector here. That's a bisector. So that means their measures are equal. So all you're going to do is set those two equal. So 7x minus 38 is equal to 2x plus 47. And then look, guys, that's such an easy equation to solve, and you need to show some work. I am going to do those two linear steps here at the same time to get the x's on the left and the constants on the right. That's fine. 5x equals, let's see, that's 85. Divide by 5, and you get x is equal to 17. But I'm not going to box that up because that's not my final answer. My final answer is to find the measure of angle ABE. So you're just simply going to come back here and say the measure of angle ABE is 7 times my x, which we found to be 17, minus 38. 7 times 17 is 119, minus 38 is equal to 81 degrees. So that's the measure of angle ABE. You can easily check your answer by making sure that this is also 81 degrees when x equals 17, because these two angles are supposed to be the same. So let's try it. 2 times 17 is 34 plus 47. 34 plus 47 is indeed 81. So that took me approximately 3 seconds to get that done and check. And write it down. I mean, you don't have to write it down. You can just put it in your calculator or do it in your head. Just confirm that your answer is correct. All right, so that was number 6. Again, knowing bisect is the key here, and then doing some math, some algebra that you should already know how to do. All right, for the next one, you've got to realize the relationship here. I told you the measure of angle 1. I told you the measure of angle 2. What are angles 1 and 2? They are a linear pair because they share this vertex. They have a common side that they share, and their non-common sides are opposite rays. So that means that they are a linear pair. So that means that measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 1 is equal to 180. So that's just your equation, guys. You just have to set it up. So we're going to say that 4x minus 3 plus 3x plus 8 is equal to 180. So that's a linear pair, okay? Some people are getting that confused with like number 8, which we have vertical angles we're going to utilize there. Let's go ahead and finish this one up because we still have to find the measure of angle 2 as well. So combining like terms, you get 7x plus 5 is equal to 180. Subtract 5 from both sides. You get 7x is equal to 175. Divide that by 7. And you get x is equal to 25. So it did say find x, so I am going to box that up. And now find the measure of angle 2 is going to be 3 times my x, 25, plus 8. So 75 plus 8 is 83. Now, what's the really super simple way to check your answer? Well, you know that measure of angle 2 and measure of angle 1 are supplementary. So just do 180 minus 83. Okay, so that's going to be 97. And then see if you get 97 when you put 25 for x into the measure of angle 1. If you do, we won. So measure of angle 1, 4 times 25 minus 3. Well, 4 times 25 is 100 minus 3, indeed, is 97. So really quick, simple way to check your answer to be super confident in what you got. All right, moving on to number 8. Again, I told you this one we are looking at, we do have a linear pair here, but first we need to utilize vertical angles to solve for the first variable. So to solve for x, we need the vertical angles. So vertical angles are formed by two intersecting lines. I want to highlight. Why'd that go like? Okay, so we want to highlight here these two. Those two lines form two pairs of vertical angles. And so one of the pairs is here. The other pair exists, but it does not help us solve anything with the double arcs. So with the single arc ones, that tells me I know that those two angles are congruent. So 4x minus 20 is going to equal 2x plus 44. Then we're going to solve that equation. It doesn't take us very long to solve this. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides and add 20 to both sides. And so I get 2x is equal to 64. Divide by 2 and you get x is equal to 32. I am going to box that up because that is something that I'm supposed to find right here. It says find x. Now to find y, I had a lot of issues with this. A lot of people then did this correctly, but then you said that this was, oops, it erased it. This was that angle. You said 32 was this whole angle. No, it's not. This whole angle is 4x minus 20. So you have to find out what that angle measure is. So you're going to take 4 times our x, which we got is 32, minus 20. That's this angle right here, which is also this angle right here, the single arcs. So 4 times 32 is going to be, let's see, 64, 128, minus 20 is 108. So this angle measure is 108 degrees. So to find y, you can see that those are a linear pair. So these two angles are a linear pair, or you could look at it, these two angles are a linear pair, right? Since they're congruent angles, they're all going to be linear pairs with this, it's going to be linear pairs with the same thing. Let me erase some of this. So we can see that y and 2x plus 44 are a linear pair, but you can also look at 4x minus 20 and y because these two are the same angle. So both of them are 108, so we're just going to do 108 plus y is equal to 180. And that's so easy, guys. Subtract 108 from both sides, and y equals 72. I'm not putting degrees on there because the y already has the degrees on there, so it's just y equals 72. So again, you got to be careful. Once you find that x, you got to plug it back in to find the actual angle, and then those two angles are supplementary. All right, that's it for this page. Let's go on to the next page. On this page, we're finding complements, supplements, those types of problems. So there are a couple ways to do these problems, and so there's the one way that I taught you, and then there's a way that people were doing it, and so I'm just going to show you a few different ways. The way I taught you would be to say x is the angle. So let x equal the measure of the angle, okay, not the complement, the angle. And then let's look at this sentence. The complement of an angle is 14 less than the angle. So that's not very much to work with. So we need to take that and dissect that, see what's going on here. But we do know that complements add up to 90. So the complement is going to be 90 minus x. So if you knew x, that measure, you would just do 90 minus x to find the complement. But we also know that the complement is, okay, also another way you can write the complement is 14 less than the angle. So if you took the angle, subtracted 14, you also get the complement. So either of these methods, if I told you what the angle was, told you the answer, you do 90 minus 14, you get the complement, or if you just did 90 minus x, the angle, or if you took the angle I gave you and subtracted 14, you'd get the complement. So these both are expressions that equal the complement. So they're equal to each other. These two are the same thing, just written differently. So that means 90 minus x has to equal x minus 14. This is a way to write the complement, so is this. So then we're going to solve that. It's super easy to solve this. So I'm going to add x to both sides, and then I'm going to add 14 to both sides. And I get 104 is equal to 2x. Got to cut that in half, and we get 52 is equal to x. So that's the angle measure, is 52 degrees. Now to find the complement, you can do one of two things. You can take it from 90, so 90 minus 52 is 38 degrees. Or, just like I said here, the other way to do it is to just take that minus 14 because the complement is 14 less. And when you do a little math there, you also get 38 degrees. So that checks and makes sure that our answer is correct. So that's one way to do it. Another way I had people do it was also using x as the angle, okay? Measure the angle, and you just said, oh, x plus, well, the complement is 14 less than the angle, so plus 14 less than that. So this expression that I just put in parentheses is the complement. It's this angle minus 14. And when you add them together, since they're complements, it equals 90. So then you really don't need those parentheses there. And then look what happens when you solve it. You get 2x minus 14 equals 90. Add 14 to both sides, and you get 2x equals 104. I've seen that before right here. So you get the same answer. It's just a little different way of setting it up initially. So I don't care which way you do it. They're both going to work. You finish solving and get the complement the same way. And look, I did tell you the complement is smaller, so some people were flipping these, and the reason they were flipping them mainly was because instead of using the x to represent the angle, they were using x to represent the complement, but they never said that, and then just misinterpreted their work and didn't understand really what they were doing. So you got to be careful with that. But I will show you how you can do how some of those people did it, which was to make x the complement instead of the supplement. So I'm going to erase this work here. And let's look at if we said, x being the complement. So if you say let x equal the measure of the complement, then I had people do, okay, well, the complement plus the original angle, which would be x plus 14, because the original angle is bigger than the complement, that equals 90. Then when you solve this guy, instead of subtracting 14, or adding 14, you're going to subtract 14. Then you get 2x is equal to 76 divided by 2, and that's 38. So that told you the complement was 38, and that would go there. And then you could figure out the original angle by adding 14 to that or doing 90 minus 38. You could also do it more of my way that I had said. So if x is the complement, then the original angle is also still 90 minus x, but then it would be equal to x plus 14 because you're treating x as the complement. So if I gave you the complement, you still would do 90 minus x to find the original angle I was thinking about. But then here, because this x is the complement, then the original angle would be 14 more than that. And this would be the original angle now. the complement of the complement. Anyway, so I like my way. I think my way makes the most sense, but all of these still do work. Okay, and then solving this will give you the same answer that you got here, and you just have to know, oh, hey, I solved for the complement first, so then that goes here, and then the original angle goes here. All right, that's it for number 9. That one was easier. Well, really it is easier than number 10, but I think number 10 is more straightforward as far as like a process to solve them. Because in number 10, you have a supplement and you have a complement. Supplement and complement. So we're just going to write down, let x equal the measure of the angle. That's the safest way to do this, is to always make x the angle measure. Then we know that the supplement is 180 minus x. So I'm not even reading this sentence yet. I'm just setting up my pieces. And I know the complement is going to be 90 minus x. Now that I have my pieces, I can read the original statement. The measure of the supplement, oh, I already have that here. Measure of the supplement, so 180 minus x is, that means equals, 22 less than, well, I can't take away 22 until I know what I'm taking it away from, so I'll just put it over here at the end. 22 less than what? 3 times the measure of the complement. Well, what's the complement's measure? 90 minus x. So 3 times 90 minus x minus 22. So this is 3 times the complement of x, 22 less than that. That's the same as the supplement. So again, there's different ways that people set this up. They would do, I'm trying to remember, I think they would do like this plus x equals 180, which works too. But this is really, the way I set it up is like literally what it says. So I'm going with that. All right, then you just have to solve it. It's not hard to do, not hard math. You just have to remember to distribute here. 270 minus 3x minus 22 equals 180 minus x. And then I'm going to combine like terms on the same side. So 270 minus 22 is 248. And it's still minus 3x because that minus applies to the 3x. And 180 minus x. And then I'm going to just get like terms on the same side. So I'm going to subtract 180 from both sides. And I'm going to add 3x to both sides. To get 2x is equal to 68 divided by 2. And you get x equals 34. So the measure of the angle is 34 degrees. Now, how can I super easily check my answer? Make sure it works in this sentence, right? Is the supplement 20 of this angle, 34, 22 less than 3 times the measure of the complement of this angle? Well, let's see. What's the supplement? The supplement will be 180 minus 34. That is 146. Okay, what's the supplement or the complement? 180 minus 90 minus 34 is 56. All right, so is this number times 4 minus 22? So that's what it says. Complement 56 times 3 minus 22 has to be the supplement, which we said is 146. So let's do it. 3 times 56 minus 22. Well, 3 times 56, that's 150 plus 18, 168 minus 22, and it is 146. Bam. We got it right. So that's a way that you can easily check your answer for that one. All right, moving on to this one, I am going to paste, I already made a video for this for the other one, so I'm just going to copy that video here because it's the same problems. And I'll do that for the last page too because I talk about, on the other video, I also talk about how to bisect a segment and bisect an angle.